There's a moment you don't see coming, but your spirit feels it before it happens. A silence in the room that feels heavier than usual. A strange stillness in the air, like time itself is holding its breath. And then, out of nowhere, a knock. Not just on a door, but on your life. Because something is about to reach you that you did not schedule, did not predict, and did not think you were ready for. And yet, you are the one it's coming for. If you are hearing this, it is not random. This message didn't arrive to entertain you, it arrived to prepare you. There is a shift already in motion, even if nothing around you looks different yet. That is how destiny often works. First in the unseen, then in the undeniable. A knock is coming into your life that will disrupt your normal days, interrupt your waiting season, and challenge everything you thought was delayed. It may come as a message, a person, an opportunity, or an answer you stopped expecting. But when it arrives, nothing will remain the same. And here is what makes it even more powerful. You almost gave up right before it came. You almost convinced yourself that nothing was changing. That silence meant no. That delay meant never. But what if the silence was never rejection? What if it was preparation? Because heaven does not rush timing, it aligns it. And right now, something has been aligning in your favor behind the scenes. Doors you thought were closed are not gone, they are waiting. Conversations you thought were finished are not over, they are paused. Opportunities you missed are not lost, they are being redirected back to you in a different form. And when the knock finally happens, it will feel like everything arrives at once. Before this video ends, you will understand why your spirit has been restless, and why this moment you are in right now is not the end of your waiting, but the beginning of your surprise. The painful season before the knock. Before any knock arrives that changes your life, there is always a season that almost breaks you in silence. A season where you keep showing up, but inside you are tired in a way no one can see. You learned how to smile in conversations while your mind was heavy. You learned how to say "I'm fine" when nothing about your inner world felt fine anymore. And over time, it stopped feeling like acting. It started feeling like survival. There were nights when you lay awake replaying everything you lost. People, chances, time, trust. Moments where you questioned whether you were forgotten, overlooked, or simply not meant for the things you kept praying for. And the hardest part wasn't just the struggle, it was the silence around it. Because when life gets difficult, people expect support. But what you often received instead was distance. Some people disappeared when you needed them most. Others stayed, but changed. And a few only stayed close enough to see your pain without helping carry it. You went through financial pressure that forced you to rethink everything. Plans delayed, doors closed. Opportunities that seemed guaranteed suddenly vanished without explanation. You adjusted, adapted, and kept moving, but each setback left a mark. Emotionally, you became drained in ways you couldn't explain. Burnout didn't come all at once. It built slowly, from disappointment to disappointment, from hope to hesitation, from belief to quiet doubt you never spoke out loud. Spiritually, there were moments you wondered if you were still being heard at all. You prayed, you hoped, you waited, but the answers felt delayed. And in that delay, doubt tried to speak louder than faith. But even in that season, something powerful was happening. Because what looked like breaking was actually shaping you. Every betrayal taught you discernment. Every delay built patience. Every disappointment removed illusions you once trusted. You started seeing people differently. You started seeing life differently. And most importantly, you started seeing yourself differently. You survived conversations that drained you. You survived endings you didn't choose. You survived losses that didn't make sense at the time. And you are still here. That alone says something powerful. Because the truth is, that season was not designed to announce your ending. It was designed to reveal your endurance. You were not destroyed in what you went through. You were refined by it. And even though it felt like nothing was moving forward, something inside you was becoming unbreakable. So, when the knock finally comes, it will not meet the same version of you that entered that season. It will meet someone who learned how to survive silence and still keep going. Why you were forced into isolation. There comes a point in every transformation where life quietly removes people you once thought you needed. At first it feels like loss, like doors closing in slow motion, conversations fading, energy shifting, people you used to reach out to suddenly becoming distant or unavailable when it mattered most. But what if that wasn't rejection? What if it was removal? Because not everyone who walks with you is meant to arrive with you. Some connections were only assigned to a previous version of your life. And when your season changes, everything that cannot grow with you begins to fall away. Sometimes gently, sometimes abruptly. You started noticing patterns. People who celebrated you when you were doing well, but became quiet when you struggled. Friends who seemed supportive, but slowly revealed jealousy through subtle words, hidden comparisons, or emotional distance. Relationships that required you to shrink yourself just to maintain peace. And without even realizing it, your spirit began to outgrow environments that once felt normal. Isolation didn't arrive to punish you. It arrived to protect what was being formed within you. Because in noise, you miss clarity. In constant opinions, you lose your own voice. In crowded emotional spaces, your intuition becomes clouded. So life in its quiet intelligence began to separate you, not to isolate you forever, but to recalibrate you. At first, the silence felt uncomfortable. You questioned it. You tried to fix it. You wondered what you did wrong. But over time, something unexpected happened. Your awareness sharpened. You started seeing people more clearly, without distraction, without attachment. You began to notice what you ignored before, energy that felt off, intentions hidden behind kindness, patterns you used to excuse. And in that silence, you started hearing yourself again. Your intuition became louder than outside opinions. Your decisions became more intentional. Your boundaries became stronger without you even trying. What once felt like loneliness slowly became clarity. You learned independence, not just physically, but emotionally and spiritually. You stopped depending on validation to feel stable. You stopped chasing explanations from people who already showed you their truth through their actions. And that is where your real preparation began. Because silence is not empty when you are being trained inside it. It is structured. It is intentional. It is forming something in you that noise would have destroyed before it fully developed. You were not removed from people because you were forgotten. You were removed because distraction cannot travel with destiny. And now, as this season nears its end, you begin to understand that isolation was never your punishment. It was your preparation room. The spiritual meaning behind the knock. A knock is never just a sound. In the deeper language of life, a knock represents arrival. It represents transition. It represents the moment something that was once distant finally comes close enough to reach you. And spiritually, it often symbolizes one of the most powerful things you can experience. Timing that is no longer delayed. Because what is knocking is not just an event, it is alignment. It is the meeting point between what you have been praying for and what has been preparing you. Doors carry meaning beyond what we see. A closed door is not always rejection. It is protection. It is delay with intention. It is life saying, "Not yet." Not because you are unworthy, but because the version of you on the other side of that door had not fully formed yet. And now, something is changing. Because when a knock comes, it means the barrier between waiting and receiving is beginning to dissolve. It suggests movement where there was stillness, response where there was silence, arrival where there was distance. For many, this moment doesn't come loudly, it comes suddenly, unexpectedly, at the exact point where they stopped trying to force outcomes and started surrendering to timing. And that is often when everything shifts. You may have already noticed subtle signs, moments where your intuition feels stronger than usual, situations that feel like they are lining up without explanation, emotional waves that come without a clear cause, almost like something inside you is preparing for impact. Some experience it through dreams that feel unusually vivid or meaningful. Others notice repeated symbols or patterns that seem too consistent to ignore. Some simply feel a quiet knowing they cannot fully explain, as if something is approaching even if nothing has physically changed yet. These are not accidents, they are signals of internal alignment. Because before anything changes in your outer world, something always shifts within your inner world first. And right now, that inner shift is already in motion. The knock symbolizes more than arrival. It symbolizes restoration. It suggests that something once interrupted is being revisited. Something once delayed is being reactivated. Something once out of reach is being repositioned back toward you, but in a new form, a new timing, or a new direction. And what makes this even more powerful is its unpredictability. It does not always come through the path you expected. It does not always look like the opportunity you imagined. Sometimes it arrives disguised as a conversation, a message, a coincidence, or a sudden opening you did not anticipate. But when it comes, you will recognize it, not with logic first, but with something deeper, with recognition in your spirit. Because the knock is not just life approaching you, it is life responding to you. And if everything around you has felt uncertain lately, if delays have stretched longer than expected, if silence has felt heavier than usual, then understand this. Silence is often the final stage before arrival, and what is coming next is not random. It is timed, and it is closer than it feels. The people who never expected you to rise. There is something quietly powerful about the way life handles those who underestimated you, not through confrontation, but through transformation. Because while you were in your silent season, there were people who formed conclusions about your story too early. People who assumed that your delay meant your downfall. People who mistook your silence for weakness, your struggle for limitation, your pause for the end of your progress. Some doubted you openly. Others did it quietly. And some didn't even realize they were doubting you. They just stopped believing your story would change. But what they didn't see was what was happening inside you. They didn't see how every disappointment sharpened your awareness, how every betrayal removed naivety, how every closed door forced you to develop strength you never needed before. Pain didn't just hurt you, it educated you. Rejection didn't just isolate you, it refined your standards. And what felt like being overlooked was actually you being redirected away from environments that could never hold your future version. Now something is shifting, because growth like yours doesn't stay hidden forever. There comes a point where inner transformation begins to show itself outwardly, not loudly at first, but unmistakably. Your decisions change, your presence changes, your boundaries become clearer, your energy becomes different, and people begin to notice, even those who once overlooked you. But here is what makes your story powerful. You are not rising through revenge. You are rising through alignment. You are not trying to prove anything. You are becoming something. And that is what makes your elevation undeniable. The same people who once underestimated your strength will eventually witness a version of you they did not anticipate. Not because you changed to impress them, but because you evolved beyond the version they judged. And the truth is, you won't need to announce your rise. Life will do it for you. Because when the breakthrough arrives, the one tied to your knock, your shift, your long season of waiting, it will naturally place you in positions you once prayed for in silence. And those who doubted your becoming will have to adjust to your arrival. Not because you forced it, but because you outgrew the version of life where they had access to you. The surprise that changes everything. And then it happens in a way you never fully prepared for. Not because you weren't hoping for change, but because you stopped expecting it to arrive so suddenly. The knock you felt in your spirit begins to manifest in your reality. And when it comes, it does not ask for permission. It does not wait for perfect timing in your mind. It simply arrives. It can come in many forms, and that is what makes it so powerful. For some, it is a message that appears out of nowhere, something you never expected to hear again. A name you had almost stopped thinking about. A conversation reopened that you thought was permanently closed. Words that shift the direction of everything instantly. For others, it is a person showing up at the exact moment they stopped searching. A connection that feels impossible by timing alone, yet undeniable in impact. Someone who brings clarity, opportunity, or restoration in ways you could not predict. And sometimes, it is financial. A door opening that no longer feels like struggle, but release. An opportunity that changes your stability. A sudden alignment that turns pressure into possibility. But no matter the form it takes, the effect is the same. Everything shifts. Because what makes this moment different is not just what arrives. It is when It arrives after the silence, after the waiting, after the emotional exhaustion of wondering if things would ever change. And suddenly, life responds. One conversation, one notification, one invitation, one decision, and everything you thought was stuck begins to move at once. It doesn't unfold slowly either. It accelerates. Things begin to connect rapidly. Doors that were closed start to loosen. Paths that were confusing begin to make sense. What once felt scattered begins to align with a precision you cannot ignore. And in that moment, you realize something profound. Nothing was truly delayed. It was being positioned, because divine alignment doesn't always look like progress while it is happening. Sometimes it looks like silence. Sometimes it looks like waiting. Sometimes it looks like nothing is moving at all, until suddenly everything moves at once. And what makes this surprise so emotionally overwhelming is not just its arrival. It is the contrast between how long you waited and how fast things begin to change. It almost feels unreal, like your life has crossed into a different timeline where what you prayed for starts to respond to you instead of staying distant. And in that emotional shift, something inside you breaks open, not in pain this time, but in release, relief, disbelief, gratitude, shock, all at once, because you begin to understand that this was never about if it would happen. It was always about when you would be ready to receive it. And now the waiting is no longer the story. The arrival is why the blessing had to be delayed. There is a truth that only becomes clear after the waiting is over. Not every delay is denial. Some delays are design, because what you were asking for was real, but so was the timing required to carry it safely. If it had arrived earlier, in a version of you that was still emotionally unprepared, still learning discernment, still reacting from pain instead of clarity, it might not have become a blessing at all. It could have become pressure, confusion, even loss, and deep down, part of you already senses that. You can look back now and see how certain opportunities didn't land, how certain doors didn't open, how certain relationships didn't last, and at the time, it felt like rejection. But now you can see something else forming underneath it all: protection. Because not everything you wanted was aligned with who you were becoming. Some things would have drained you faster than they fulfilled you. Some connections would have slowed your growth instead of supporting it. Some opportunities would have placed you in environments you were not yet equipped to navigate with stability. So, life didn't just give you time. It gave you development. You didn't just wait. You matured. You learned emotional control through disappointment. You learned patience through silence. You learned discernment through experience, not theory. You learned how to sit with uncertainty without losing your direction. And that kind of growth cannot be rushed. There were lessons that only delay could teach you. Lessons about people, about timing, about energy, about your own strength. Things you would not have understood if everything had come easily. At the time, it felt like nothing was happening. But now, you can see it differently. You are being positioned, not punished, prepared. Because blessings are not just about receiving, they are about sustaining. And sustaining requires a version of you that can hold what you prayed for without losing yourself in the process. That is what the delay protected you from. It protected your future from instability. It protected your mind from overwhelm. It protected your spirit from misalignment. And now, as you step closer to what is finally arriving, you begin to realize something important. You are not the same person who started waiting. You are more grounded, more aware, more stable inside, more capable of recognizing what belongs in your life and what does not. And that is why the timing is shifting now. Because what was once too heavy for you to carry has now become something you are strong enough to receive. The delay was never the absence of blessing. It was the formation of the version of you who could finally hold it. The internal shift happening right now. Something within you is already changing, even if your external life hasn't fully caught up yet. And the strange part is, you may not be able to explain it clearly, but you can feel it. The things that used to trigger you don't hit the same way anymore. Situations that once pulled you into emotional chaos now feel distant, almost irrelevant. Conversations that used to drain you now feel easier to walk away from. It's not that life became easier overnight, it's that you became different inside it. There is a quiet detachment forming within you, not coldness but clarity. You are no longer emotionally entangled in every cycle that once kept you stuck. You are beginning to see patterns faster. You are recognizing energy sooner. You are responding differently, even when nothing around you has changed yet. And that is a major shift, because before external change ever appears, internal separation always happens first. You may also notice a growing need for solitude, not loneliness, but space. Space to think, space to breathe, space to hear yourself without the noise of other people's expectations, opinions, or emotional demands. What once felt uncomfortable now feels necessary. In that space, your intuition becomes stronger. Decisions feel clearer. You are no longer second-guessing everything as much as you used to. There is a quiet knowing inside you that didn't used to be there, or at least wasn't this strong. And with that comes peace. Not a loud emotional happiness, but a steadier kind of peace. The kind that doesn't depend on everything going right around you. The kind that starts forming even in uncertain circumstances. This is what transformation actually looks like in its early stages. It rarely announces itself with external breakthroughs first. Instead, it reshapes how you react, how you perceive, how you detach, and how you align with what feels right versus what simply feels familiar. And without realizing it, you are starting to outgrow versions of yourself that once survived difficult seasons. Old emotional cycles are losing their grip. Old attachments are weakening. Old reactions are being replaced with awareness. This is not random. It is preparation, because the more internally aligned you become, the less resistance you carry into your next chapter. And that is why things around you may still look quiet, while something inside you feels increasingly active. You are not waiting the same way you used to. You are not thinking the same way you used to. You are not emotionally available to the same cycles you used to repeat. And even if no one else can see it yet, a new version of you is already forming, quietly, steadily, and in perfect timing for what is about to arrive. The moment the door finally opens, and then it happens. Not gradually, not softly, but in a way that interrupts everything you thought was still waiting. The knock becomes real. The message arrives. The opportunity appears. The door you had almost stopped looking at suddenly moves. At first, you don't even react the way you expected to, because part of you has been trained by disappointment. You pause. You hesitate. You reread. You double-check. You try to make sense of it before you allow yourself to feel it. But deep down, you already know. This is it. And in that moment, something inside you begins to break. Not in pain, but in release. Because the weight you have been carrying for so long suddenly has nowhere to stay. The tension you normalized begins to dissolve. The emotional exhaustion you adapted to starts to lift in waves you didn't realize you were holding back. And then it hits you. The waiting wasn't empty. The silence wasn't meaningless. The delays weren't random. They were leading you here. Memories begin to surface all at once. The nights you stayed up wondering if anything would ever change. The moments you felt overlooked. The times you questioned your direction. The relationships that ended without closure. The doors that closed without explanation. And now you see it differently. None of it was wasted. Not the isolation, not the betrayal, not the confusion. Not the long emotional silence that made you question yourself more than once. Every part of it was shaping the person standing here now. And the most overwhelming part is not just that something finally arrived. It is that you are still here to receive it. Because there were moments you almost gave up on the version of this story. Moments where hope felt too far away to trust. Moments where you convinced yourself that maybe it would never happen for you. But it did not end there. And now, the same life that once felt closed begins to open in real time. You feel it in your body first. A shift, a release, a recognition that something long awaited has finally crossed into reality. Tears come, but they are different now. Not from pain, but from relief. From disbelief. From the quiet shock of realizing that what you held onto in silence is finally responding. And as the door opens wider, one truth becomes undeniable. You did not survive everything you went through just to stay in the same place. You survived it to arrive here. And now that the door is open, your life is no longer asking you to wait. It is asking you to step forward. Final prophetic encouragement. If you are still here, it is because something in you is refusing to give up on what you cannot yet see. And that is not weakness. That is alignment beginning to form in your spirit. Because what has been spoken over your life is not finished. What has been delayed is not denied. And what has been silent is not absent. You are not forgotten. Even in the moments where it felt like nothing was moving, something was still being written in your favor. Quietly, precisely, carefully, preparing you for what your eyes could not yet recognize. And now, as you stand at the edge of this shift, the invitation is simple. Do not lose expectation here. Do not return to doubt just because timing tested your patience. Do not abandon belief just because the process took longer than you expected. What is coming does not require perfect understanding, it requires readiness. Stay open, stay grounded, stay willing to receive what you once prayed for in silence. Because the same life that trained you through struggle is the one preparing to reward your endurance. And what arrives next may not look like what you imagined, but it will carry everything you asked for in a form that fits who you have become. Speak this over yourself. I am not behind. I am being prepared. I am not forgotten. I am being positioned. I am not waiting in vain. I am approaching alignment. Let your expectation rise again, not from desperation, but from knowing that your season is shifting. And when the moment comes, you will recognize it. Not because it looks dramatic at first, but because something in you will say, "This is what I was being prepared for." So stay steady, because the knock is not just coming. It is already on its way to your life. And when it arrives, it will confirm what you are beginning to sense right now. Nothing about your journey was wasted, and everything has been leading you here.